Hey everybody, I'm back. Please, if you're watching this, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. I put a video up just a few minutes ago about stopping the execution of Marcellus Williams in Missouri for a crime he did not commit. There is no evidence for such, and he's on death row, and he is scheduled to be executed around 10 o'clock Tuesday morning, September 24th. And there is a link to sign a petition. You can go to the innocenceproject.org and find out more about it. There is no monetization on that video. And I apologize for the sound. I left my Bluetooth on while I was doing it. But if you turn it up, you should be able to hear. But it's more important to me that people know about it and act on it, because we have a responsibility as citizens. I don't care whether you're, black, white, purple, yellow. What they're doing to black people is wrong. What they're doing to African Americans is wrong. What has been done to us over and over again, killing us without evidence, is wrong. So please, if you believe, I'm calling on anybody who believes in American democracy to sign it. And I purposely am making this video about something with different stuff in it, but I did not want what I'm about to say and talk about to get obstructed by the seriousness of Marcellus Williams. Okay? All right. So I told you I was going to do something on some political stuff. Kamala Harris finally met with the National Association of Black Journalists. I guess after they decided they was going to make time for her instead of letting her be on Zoom, and after that disastrous thing with Donald Trump. But I'm not going to go there first. All right. So, and that was just this past week. So Michael Eric Dyson, professor at Vanderbilt in Nashville, Tennessee. Now, y'all remember Michael Eric Dyson having that exchange on CNN where he called South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace, saying, basically, you're a wonderful person, but what you're doing by purposely mispronouncing Kamala Harris's name is connected to a larger history of slavery and disrespect to black women and white ownership. And that's, that's not a direct quote, but basically paraphrasing, which was true. You may also remember, if you saw my video on it, when I said I wanted to avoid quoting Dyson, but I didn't want to get into why, because the point was made, and he was right in that particular situation. He was absolutely right. Let me tell you something. I have a problem with public intellectuals. And not because I don't think intelligent people who critique the American system and demand justice for all shouldn't have a public platform so people can learn from them, so on and so forth. In my experience, public intellectuals that post 1985 kind of crew, the Cornel West, not that Cornel West isn't smart, Michael Eric Dyson, Nicole Hannah-Jones, give me one more, Melissa Harris Perry. There's a lot going on with that. Because what they do is, Mark Lamont Hill, it cheapens their intellect. Because when you go on these major news corporate platforms, there's always like the good people and the bad people. So even if you're a broad thinker, right, and you are intelligent, so on and so forth, you are limited to what you can say and do. They put you in a box. And these people who are academically advanced trained, like PhDs advanced trained, not Nicole Hannah-Jones, but you get my point. These people know better, but they'll do it for a check. And I would love to sit here like other people, ain't nothing wrong with that if it's for the money. No, all money ain't good money. All right? And Michael Eric Dyson has always come across to me as disingenuous, insincere since the time I was a kid and I saw him on a TV show talking about intellectual macking. And I just thought that was corny, even as like a 10-year-old. And it just unnerved me. It was just like, what? But anyway, I say all that to say this. What I was saying when I didn't want to get to that point or spend too much time on him was Nancy Mace, the reason why I'm even bringing this up at all, Nancy Mace, that racist ass congresswoman, I'll call her whatever I want to, which is something that white people do, and that's why I have a problem when black people are purposely mispronouncing her name, like they are on independent outlets on YouTube, like Black Power Media, and you have people like Kamala Franklin saying, oh, I don't care, I'll mispronounce her name anytime I want to, but y'all claiming to be about black liberation, and then y'all do shit like this, purposely disrespecting black people's names, when y'all's aren't the kind that would be on the license plates in Walmart. So don't play with me. All right. Nancy Mace. Racist Nancy Mace from South Carolina. All right. So she revealed in a congressional hearing this past week, you heard it, a live congressional hearing. These things have no integrity anymore. When someone brought up how she was corrected on CNN about her mispronouncing the current vice president's name, Kamala Harris, by entering it into congressional record. And so what she decided to do as a challenge to them was bring up the fact that Michael Eric Dyson, who was the one who said, hey, this is part of a legacy of, disrespecting black people. Once again, which was correct. But she then brings up copies of flirty text messages from Dyson, who is a professor of Vanderbilt. And because he did this, she claims he isn't concerned about the pronunciation of her name. Now, why the fuck is Congress having a back and forth about her appearance on CNN, which was for a check like everybody else's, and to put her racism on full display? I don't know. Maybe it's because we have a bunch of incompetent assholes who are so extreme to the point where all they're doing is the Republicans, the Democrats, y'all the same fucking people. Ain't none of y'all stopped the police from murdering black people. Ain't none of y'all stopped that genocide that's going on in Palestine. Miss me with the bullshit. Okay? So anyway, so that's what we got. Now, I will say this much. Those are not the same things. That yes, Michael Eric Dyson can actually call her out on that shit and could have sent flirty text messages. Okay? However, he sent text that said, and this is a quote from the FoxNews.com article where they produced it. Now, once again, do I typically go to Fox News? No. But they were the first people to drop this, and then I followed it up and made sure I, had the right shit, because we know how Fox News does. And this is a quote from the text messages. Shh, don't tell anybody. We look good together. Dyson sent pictures of the pair of them. Like, they took some pictures maybe, I think, after, the interview or whatever. Followed with laughing out loud and kissing emojis. After the congressional woman laughed at the message, Dyson complimented Mace on her look, citing her gorgeousness. Now, in and of itself, people can sometimes try to smooth over tense situations by complimenting you. Okay? In and of itself, could that be offensive? Yes, depending on who you are. Maybe you're not comfortable with a married man sending you those kinds of text messages. However, that being said, now we know how white women have had a century and a half of long history of accusing black men of sexual misconduct, rape, and everything else that has led to their murders, lynchings, and destruction of their individual livelihoods. Okay? I don't care if it's Emmett Till. I know it's the most famous example, but countless of the African Americans whose names we will never know because all we found was their bodies in forests throughout the South, the Midwest, and even parts of the North, for being murdered for not being submissive enough to white people or on the basis of an accusation without proof. Hashtag stop the execution of Marcellus Williams. Okay? Now, I don't care if it's that, To Kill a Mockingbird, to Ida B. Wells' well-documented recordings of lynchings for over 30 years in her writings entitled The Race Record. That is probably a huge part of it, because I don't think that woman felt harassed because she didn't use that term, and white women will pull that out real quick. She was looking to undermine his analysis of her racism, and quite frankly, she got the chance to do it, but the chance only because he gave it to her. What the fuck were you thinking, Michael Eric Dyson? And before people jump down my throat, Dyson is no longer a professor at Georgetown University in DC. because black female students were reporting him for sexual harassment. And they had ignored these kind of things for years. And don't ask me how I know specifically. Just know that as somebody who earned a PhD in history from UCLA, and academia can be small, particularly amongst African Americans. And I'm not here to expose anybody because that's not my place. In the sense that I can't talk. I've never met him. But I will put this article down here from the Georgetown Voice, where they have actually investigated Michael Eric Dyson for harassment allegations and before his hire at Vanderbilt. The fact that he was even rehired at Vanderbilt also lets us know they don't give a fuck about black women being harassed, or anybody for that matter, because that happens a lot in academia. All right, and I hate when black people put us in these shitty positions to defend one another, because many of us who aren't delusional know how serious and rampant racism is in our everyday lives. But your math, Dyson, is mathing in terms of your behavior. Maybe you were joking, but the problem is you have a history of doing this to women. I hate that I am even in a fucking position to actually say this about a racist white bitch who was actively disrespecting another black woman. What were you thinking, bruh? Don't cry to us now. Don't ask the black community to come out for you now. All right. Now, I'm going to get to Kamala Harris's interview with the National Association of Black Journalists after that terrible disaster that we could blame on Donald Trump, but also on them for their poor journalism. But before I start, Janet Jackson. And I'm not going to give you too much. I'm not. Because I like the Jacksons. I love Michael Jackson. No, I don't believe he was ever a pedophile. The average pedophile commits over 230 cases before they are even caught. Those stories were inconsistent. They came after Michael Jackson, and they did it for sport. Journalists like Larry King, who had everything to lose, but also a history being a very famous journalist, why would he go out on a limb and say, I overheard the prosecutors talking in a restaurant that said this is just for money? They knew it wasn't true. And the way those people came out when he died and said, oh, it was never true, we made it up. Get the fuck out of here. Okay, so I just want that to be clear. I'm not saying that maybe his behavior around children, the fact that he was still never having a childhood, isn't strange. I'm not here to say that because, okay, fine. But calling him a pedophile, no, I don't believe that. I'm not here for the fuck shit. Miss me. And because Tito Jackson, and all respect to the dead, and the Jackson family have been through a lot. I don't care how much fame and money you have. There are some things that are just rough. And she just lost her brother. So I want to make sure that's in context and just know that this is separate. Janet, I Get So Lonely, which I play on a regular basis because that's one of my favorite songs that ever existed in the history of the world. Doesn't really matter. One of my favorite songs. Okay? But ma'am, you did an interview. Okay? And that's what happens when you're Janet Jackson and you're a fucking superstar. You're a legend and there's nothing anybody can do about it. But you are quoted as saying, well, you know what they supposedly said, referring to Kamala Harris. She's not black. That's what I heard. That she's Indian. Her father's white. That's the part that took me out. Okay? That's what I was told. I mean, I haven't watched the news in a few days. I was told they discovered her father is white. Janet, and granted, I appreciate you at least cultivating enough of a story to say this is what I heard as opposed to what I read. But before you speak about something like this at such a critical time in just everyday African American life, you should have fact checked before you spoke on it. Or you could have just said no comment. Her father's not white. Now, don't get me wrong. The skin bleaching that happens from Nigeria to Jamaica and throughout the Caribbean and Dominican Republic and the self-hatred of blackness is not an African American thing. And it's actually, and despite the lack of presence of white people physical existence, does not do anything for black people's self-esteem in these other places. Kamala Harris, Google her father and tell me if he is not black. Now, he may be Jamaican, and somebody left some comment. This is why I was talking about the debate. And I don't like to get back and forth with these Trump people and black people who just are against Kamala for whatever. I have legitimate issues with Kamala. I'm still going to vote for her. But I have legitimate issues with Kamala. She ain't black. But I don't vote for black people just because they black. So what fucking difference does it make? Left a comment talking about oh yeah, people are ignorant. They don't know that there's all different races in Jamaica. Yes, the fuck I do. I know that there's a large Chinese population in Jamaica, not more than African descendant people, thanks to chattel slavery. Sarcasm. All right. And there are Asian populations. There are indigenous peoples from that area. So I am very aware of the demographics. I just wasn't about to go back and forth with these people. Okay. Nevertheless, Kamala's father is not white. And if Kamala was Indian and white, guess what? She'd be pulling the Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley, who has had plastic surgery to look more and more white, the governor of South Carolina, despite the fact that she was an Indian immigrant who claims racism doesn't exist, but then has documented and talked about in interviews her experiences with discrimination growing up in South Carolina. Get the entire dog fuck out of here. Her father basically abandoned them after they divorced. What could be blacker than having your daddy leave you? I'm sorry. That's not funny. But I'm just saying, her father's not white. And I know Jamaicans and all the people, a lot of them people in the Caribbean do not like being black. We understand African Americans blackness differently because the way chattel slavery was set up in the United States, the British, when they sent over their population, they weren't just doing exploration, invasion, and colonization. They had an overpopulation problem because of the enclosure movement, where they allowed landowners to get more profit if they evicted British tenant farmers from the land. So they went into the cities to find work. And what happened is in the cities like London and larger cities throughout Great Britain, they got tired of this vagabond population, this vagrant population. And so they started putting people in jail and running out of space to put people in jail. Sound familiar? So they said these royal governors, the elites, the entrepreneurs who could afford to invest in an expedition to go and colonize land, they sent their criminals over. They didn't give a fuck if they came back. They sent them over. That's why it's called a settler colony in the United States. So there was always more white people than black people. So the way they avoided undermining the institution of slavery that built the wealth of this country that is still living on right to this day, the way they did was whatever the mother is, the child is. Therefore, if the mother is black, the child is black. So when they were raping and sexually assaulting black women over and over and over again, because black people under law and in policy throughout the United States were nothing more than property, they could ensure that that slave was an investment. Not only was it's not even a regular investment, it was free. Because if they raped a black woman, it doesn't matter if they came out with really thick afro hair and then light blue eyes and pale skin. They were a you-know-what to them. And so our concept of blackness is, yeah, you one of us. And we know when we see them people with accents, and maybe everybody hasn't experienced this, but I certainly have. The level of or action of superiority to African Americans that I've experienced at work, even with people who are not in positions of power, just on the strength that they are from the islands and from Africa, or with parents who are immigrants but feel like their kid is too good to be in an African American's class, despite the fact that those white teachers don't have the education that I have. I've seen that shit before. And so Kamala Harris's daddy may be a part of that legacy. But what I'm saying is, for all intents and purposes, she's black. Okay? And I'm really getting tired of that. Because Barack Obama done sold us out on multiple occasions. And yeah, people have gone in, but they've always gone in on an ignorant level. Like, if people don't go in on an informed level. And I don't think the Jacksons, and once again, I love the Jacksons, okay? We know that the Jackson last name in general is just of high regard. The greatest, Michael Jackson. We got Janet Jackson. We have the Jackson 5. We have Jesse Jackson. All right, we have, Jacksons are big, okay? But I don't think the Jacksons of the Jackson family, the musical Jackson family, are in any position to directly critique somebody's blackness, especially considering the levels of plastic surgery, the minimizing the structure of their African noses, creating white features on their face. And once again, I'm not saying that without empathy. I know their father sat around and abused them and beat them down and made them feel bad about their blackness. But you can't, I don't know that y'all are the ones to gatekeep. Actually, I do know y'all shouldn't be the ones to gatekeep. So, Jen, if I was you, I'd just relax on that. Okay? Because I'm not sure you would feel good if your son was called something that he wasn't, considering that the person that you had a child with, that you were in a relationship, was not African American. All right? So I think we all should slow our roll. So the National Association of Black Journalists, Kamala Harris interviewed. The National Association of Black Journalists is only getting attention because they fucked up that fucking interview with Donald Trump. They are not, they could do a lot better, and they are not ready for prime time. However, they sit her down and interview her. And this, of course, was an interview that made more sense because Kamala Harris is not a raging psychopath. And if she is, she has enough sense not to appear as one. All right. So they basically asked her about things they've done. She said they've created over 16 million jobs. This is the lowest black unemployment rate that's been. And I'm like, this is what we have to remember. Okay, because like I said, I'm not a disciple. I'm not a sycophant. I know I have to vote for my life. And Donald Trump and his followers are no joke. And some of y'all think, oh yeah, we're going to become entrepreneurs with Donald Trump, this, that, and the other. Donald Trump did not create a whole legion of business owners via his presidency. Y'all up here thanking him for the PPP loans. How many people are on trial right now? The way they misappropriated those funds. Quit playing with me. And Congress had to force him to do it. 16 million jobs. This is the point you have to realize. It was the same thing under the Obama administration when there was, an ounce of growth under Donald Trump. The problem is these are all low-wage jobs. You see what I mean? Like, you can create this number of jobs, but these jobs don't pay the bills. So what you have are people who are underemployed. So if simply having a job is the bare minimum, that's not going to work for me. And I'm not impressed as people are consistently feeling the effects of the economy. The economy that is bleeding because of our investment in helping Ukraine against Russia and in the exact investment in the genocide of Palestinian people. And it's a goddamn genocide. I don't want to hear shit else about it. There is no other way to go around that definition that is outlined in the United Nations Charter from 1948 and that Raphael Lemkin had written about back in 1944 when everybody ignored him. That man ended up dying of a heart attack. A Jewish man who helped define it, a Polish Jew. Miss me with the bullshit, Kamala. All right. She talks about capping costs, prescription costs for seniors at $35 and $2,000 per year. That's a lot of money, but $35, particularly for things like insulin and stuff like that. Like I said, I had a grandfather who dealt with diabetes, and that's the greatest man I've ever known to date. And I love my pop-pop more than anything. And so that does mean something to me. She said the prices of groceries are still too high, and there's more work to do. Yeah, Chica, stop supplying weapons to Israel, and I bet you can get them bread prices back down. I can go to Trader Joe's and not feel like I'm at fucking Whole Foods. So she said the U.S. has a housing shortage and young people just can't afford to buy homes. I want everybody across the board to stop saying that. And I know I'm going in on the way Kamala's dealing with her policies. And granted, the reason why I'm going in on the way Kamala deals with her policies, because as a U.S. citizen, as somebody who did what they were supposed to do, go to school, get their education, has a job, and I know that at any day, I can be out on my ass. Because at the end of the day, I need my paychecks. I'm not somebody who can say, oh yeah, okay, fuck that job. I don't have that space. I don't. But I also recognize that I'm able to go in on Kamala Harris because she actually explains her policies, whereas Donald Trump, who said there's no need for a debate, it's over. Wherever's going to, I've already done 2. All presidents used to do 3 until your fuck shit came along and people catered and kowtowed to you as a white man who overuses and abuses his authority. So I recognize that I'm going in on her, but still, don't think you're going to get in office without consequences, okay? No. We give you our vote, we expect something. So she said the U.S. has a housing shortage. My problem with that is there isn't a housing shortage. How many abandoned buildings do you all pass by on a regular basis? There's plenty in New York. There is an impossible heavy debt from student loans. And even if there weren't, there are plenty of homes, houses, open land. And I know because I've driven across this country just trying to get back and forth when I was going to graduate school. Land, condos. Y'all are simply overpricing them. And there's price gouging on homes as if people don't have the right to shelter or should have the right to shelter simply because corporations can do it. Because rich people are unregulated under law. They can do whatever the fuck they want. Now, you please tell me how you expect the country to continue when its people won't have housing and shelter. For the few who want to stay in power, in order for them to be rich, they need people to exploit. But if ain't none of us here and we just all exploit hell, what the hell you expect to happen? What has happened historically? Rebellions and revolutions. Anyway, and somebody was talking about how, a civil war won't happen because it's bad for business and America is just a corporation. America is a corporate entity in the sense they're always making money. But you know how America has made its money? Slavery and weapons. Okay? During the first Civil War, and I don't want one to happen, but the way this country is divided and the buildup that we know, maybe you don't know, from the 1850s in the U.S., slavery was getting worse. That's why it led to a civil war. If it was just getting better over time, what the fuck they need to kill each side for? The thing with it is that even if we talk about a civil war and people are, oh no, that won't happen. The U.S., the North, made money because they had more manufacturing businesses. And so therefore they were able, and they were selling guns to both sides. That is how the North gets up in terms of profit. The South had been the richest section of the country. And the South, after the Civil War, doesn't even catch up kind of economically until into World War II. And in World War II, I know y'all want to believe your country is right. And if you think I'm making this up, you can go and look up Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States, where he talks about how the United States was selling weapons to both the Axis and Allied powers. So this whole America eventually gets in. America was selling weapons to both sides and they were getting rich. And that's how the middle class and the suburbs are developed, which white people heavily benefited from. Okay, so don't play in my face like I don't know my history, okay? Child care and elder care they asked her about. She was like, no working family should pay more than 7% of their income on child care. Yeah, you might want to transfer that war budget, Miss Harris, to re-up Head Start and provide subsidies to daycare and after-school workers so that they can do that. I don't know why it is so hard in America, the brainwashing, and this is across races and across classes. And poor people will be some of the main ones. No, I don't think we should do that because everybody believes that one day they're going to be rich and they don't want to have to pay back into the system. What does it profit us when kids don't have a place to go after school? Okay? The most dangerous hours for a kid is between 3 and 6. Why? Because their parents may not be off work, typically or not, and school is over. And that's how they get into trouble. And crime. I don't care whether it's petty or extreme. But that puts the citizenry at risk. And so why not invest in it? Because they don't give a fuck about people. You have to see people as things and objects. That's a real psychological problem. But because so many white corporate business leaders, and there's a few black ones, but who think the same way they do, they're not going to actually investigate it as a problem because rich people are considered the example, okay, in this country. And that's just the reality of it. She says she wants to expand the child tax credit, the child tax credit to $6,000 for young families. Y'all can do that and y'all need to do it some more. Because even when one parent, especially if they're divorced or not, or just were never married, if one parent claims a child on their taxes, the other parent can't. And as I heard this woman who's a professor and a Harvard researcher, she said, God forbid both parents can afford to take care of their kid. Why does it have to be one or the other on tax forms? And I agree with that. All right, so Kamala, get it together. So then I asked her about black men and how black men are showing heavy support for Donald Trump in polls and things like that. So they asked about how polls are showing that black men are voting for Donald Trump, but specifically because they think he'll be better for the economy. Even though there's no goddamn proof and we were in the middle of a world health crisis and a pandemic. So she says, look, I appreciate the spirit of the question. She was nice about it. Then she said she's been asked this a bunch of times, and she said we can't presume black men are in anybody's pocket. I have to earn their vote like anybody else's, and she can't assume she'll get their votes because, quote, I'm black, end quote. How many times Kamala got to tell y'all that? Kamala looks black. She can't help that she has an Indian mother. You can tell by that blowout. The fact that blowout is necessary should tell you something about her hair. Okay, Howard University, aka Alpha Chapter. And we done seen them early pictures of her up until a certain point. Yeah, her mother is Indian. And her mother also did what a lot of not a lot of biracial, but enough biracial people have to do. And that's when they sit down their kid and say, in this country, you're black and you're going to be treated as such, like I told you. Because in America, the majority of people were white, and they would have eventually undermined their system of slavery and racial degradation if just because you didn't have one black parent, you weren't black. This whole change of you're not acknowledging your white parent if you call yourself black that began in 2000 with this whole colorblind movement was designed so that those people who identified as black wouldn't put that on the census, and then therefore they'd have to give funding to public schools and other public resources in black communities. Even though we know we're going to treat them like, you know what? We want them to think they're different. That's that bullshit I'm talking about. And y'all got to be smart enough to see that shit. So then she said she intends to be the president of all people. And then that's when I was like, Kamala, please stop with that shit. You and Barack. Okay? What the hell are y'all saying that for? The president of the United States, bitch. Lord forgive me. Chick. Is the president of the United States is the president of everybody, whether we like them or not. Donald Trump was the president, whether I liked it or not. He was still my president as a citizen of the United States. Why do y'all do that? It's a dog whistle to basically say to white people, see, I'm not going to do everything for black people. Don't nobody do nothing for us. Like, fuck you. Or don't expect too much from me, except to be president of all people, which means white people who are the majority in this country, and quite frankly, their skin is social capital, racial capital, and everything else. Like, what the fuck? So anyway, she talks about the economic opportunity program she's been pushing as vice president, getting more money to small banks to help get loans to entrepreneurs. This is all part of her black man response. She said startup funds are at $5,000. And she said nobody can start up a business with $5,000. So she's expanded it to $50,000. Now, to me, she uses as an example of what will help black men. I guess because all black men want to be businessmen, and many of them are always talking about being an entrepreneur, which is why they following behind Donald Trump's ass, who don't like none of their black asses and wouldn't rent to them or give them a loan, even if he could and had a surplus of a surplus of a surplus. Nevertheless, and then she talked about eliminating medical debt from the credit score. First of all, y'all do realize that credit scores did not always exist. Those were created in the 80s under Ronald Reagan by those fucking baby boomers who are always telling us we're lazy. That was not the go-to, and that's how they're able to afford houses, which means there's a system that has been created. While there are houses being built that people cannot access the houses because their credit isn't good enough, and that wasn't even always the judge of what people could pay and not pay. We're the ones who dealt with that. The millennials. And now the Gen Zers, but they're okay with being lazy. I don't give a fuck. They're okay with being lazy. And that's what they say. They quit jobs. It's not feeding myself. They don't care if they broke. I care about me if I'm broke. And black families are more likely, she talks about, more likely to carry medical debt. And I was like, yes, because they lack health care, Kamala. And I know you know that. But I'm just saying, they lack health care. And so they acquire medical debt. That should never go on anybody's credit report. How dare you charge people in debt for being sick? Y'all do realize you could drive over the border into Canada. Not only could they not refuse you service, but they would take care of you and not charge you. Because that's included in their taxes. I'm not saying it's some racial oasis. But nevertheless. Anyway, so they asked her about the war in Gaza. So already prepare yourself for the fuck shit. So she said, well, I've called for a ceasefire and a two-state solution. Which is against what Bibi Netanyahu, who is the prime minister of Israel, has claimed he even wants. Okay, the same person we're supplying weapons with, so on and so forth. Stop saying, well, I feel like they have the right to, Israel's right to defend itself. October 7th with the attack from Hamas. And this is what she said. She said women were raped at that Hamas attack. Y'all, listen to me and please Google it, because I don't want you to think that I'm just sitting up here talking on the side of my neck. That never fucking happened. That Hamas attack was a war attack. They did not rape any Israeli women or anybody else, and they know it. And they keep that lie going to somehow justify what they're doing to those Palestinian people. And rape ain't never been a Palestinian, a Hamas, a Muslim, a Christian, a Jewish thing. It is something men do disproportionately to conquer women. So miss me. And you lying in my face and I ain't stupid. So they asked her a very pointed question though. Does the U.S. have any leverage to support Palestinians and Palestinian sovereignty? And they kept going with the question. They said, especially when we're allied as a country with Israel. I said, thank you. That's the way you ask a question. She gave a bullshit answer. You already know how this goes. And she goes, absolutely. Because you know lawyers think they just make an absolute statement and people will have confidence in it. We don't. She said that there can be an agreement that there is no changing of the territorial lines in Gaza in the two-state solution. Okay, I want y'all to look up Ralph Bunche. That's the name Black History you should know. Let me explain something to you about the two-state solution. Girl, bye. The whole issue of this war that's been going on for 80 years is that they colonized Palestine for the Jews to give them a safe place. There is nothing religiously documented that justifies this. Okay? Them 10 commandments from the Torah, which as a Christian is considered the Old Testament. Yeah, thou shalt not kill, treat thy neighbor as thyself. See, they don't acknowledge that this ain't about religion. This is about white colonization and the fact that they can do it to brown people across the world. They're fighting because that's their land. And Israel is killing and bombing Palestinians they were killing and bombing them from the gate, and the United States has helped fund it by giving them bombs, destructive weapons to destroy these people because they plan on getting an economic benefit. Because once again, they don't see people as people. Y'all need to go have a talk with Jesus because something is wrong. All right. So it made our news heavily October 7th. It hasn't even been a year, y'all. A year since the attack by Hamas defending themselves against Israeli terrorism. And I'll say it because that's what it is. It made our news so heavily because Israelis were killed. White Jewish people were killed and their lives are valued. And those brown Palestinians' lives are not. This is not about religion. And if you want the Jews to have someplace safe, then you make Germany give up their goddamn land after they carried out a Jewish Holocaust. And after they had been practicing on Africans in the Congo. But see, y'all don't want to talk about that, right? Miss me. Okay. It made our news because Israelis were killed, not the millions of Palestinians. Israelis in the U.S. supporting Israeli terror had killed all these years before. Over and over again. There are people who are saying, my family, here in this country, my family doesn't exist anymore. They've wiped out my bloodline. And we're just talking about the Gaza Strip. That was their land. It is their land, and they're fighting to have it back. And you know Muslims don't play that. They don't play that. So then they asked her about specific policy changes, because people are always talking about what they might do, so on and so forth. But specific policy changes by her as president, you know, if she wins, that the U.S. will make to reduce their help in arming Israel if they're supposed to carry out this ceasefire. She responded that, well, one of the things I'm proud of is the pause we have put on the 2,000-pound bombs. I said, bitch, I didn't even know the U.S. was dropping bombs that weigh 2,000 pounds. That shouldn't even exist. Y'all motherfuckers are sick for building that shit. We used the atomic bomb once, and the detriment to Japan is still felt in their environment. Oh, we're sorry we used it. Y'all didn't. If y'all really gave a damn about Jews during World War II, why didn't y'all drop it on Germany? Why didn't y'all drop it on Russia? Huh? I need to know. Yeah, because in the racial hierarchy, y'all were okay with it. Fuck out of here. That shouldn't even exist in warfare, and anybody can win without a 2,000 fucking pound bomb. The U.S. got everything else they can do. And a pause is not a stop. It's not an end. It's not a... Those people are losing their lives. If that was us, I mean, just put yourself in that situation. Bombs constantly dropping. You're a mother with a child who's born with brain damage because of the radiation from these bombs, or dies in your arms because of dehydration and toxic water. Doctors who live in America who go over there to help because they're against this war find out they don't even have space in hospitals to treat people. And they can't even get them basic water while they try to treat them from the damage that could stop if the U.S. quit helping Israel and using those weapons. They don't give a damn. And I'm a firm believer in Black Lives Matter. And the same way Martin Luther King said, the issues that we're dealing with here in this country as African Americans, I'm not going to support that war in Vietnam. I'm not going to support y'all in the name of civil rights, not saying anything about it, because I know the violence that has been heaped upon us through the structure of U.S. militarism, racism, and capitalism is made possible because they practice it against us, and now they're doing it abroad, and I'm not going to stand here for it. And I say the same thing as a person who believes that Black Lives Matter, from Marcellus Williams to Crystal Kaiser, who is in jail for killing the man who raped and trafficked her because she got tired of being raped, and she was 17 years old when they convicted her, and he had been doing that since she was 16. And I ain't never going to be so blind that I'm going to pretend like murdering people and carrying out a genocide is acceptable. Well, it doesn't matter. The fuck it don't. All right. So I know everybody's been talking about Diddy. This ain't really my thing. I made a video on Crystal Kaiser, and I still believe in freeing Crystal Kaiser because we need trauma sensitive sentencing and forms to protect trafficking victims, especially since so many African American girls are often the victims of it, who are already dealing with racism, sexism, and classism, because many of them do it for money because they don't have any other choices. And I'm a big advocate on ending sex trafficking, because when people are trafficked, they also don't get an education. And when you don't have an education, you don't have a way in this world. And so you go back to that same kind of work. It's never been funny to me, the idea of strip clubs, the concept of strip clubs and people patronizing strip clubs. That is not a form of independence. Let me tell you something. You go and strip because you don't have any other choices. I don't care how glamorous they try to make it. And that's why when Cardi B was keeping it real at times, and she said when young girls would come up to strippers and say, well, how much money do you make a night? And they'd be like, what's the least amount of money you make a night? And they'd be like, oh, $500. She said, no, the least amount of money you make is $0. You can go out there and them men won't even pay you. And black people not having an education and being denied an education has a long history while being sexually exploited, beginning with slavery. And so motherfuckers like Diddy, I'll be goddamn if I sit up here and defend that shit. That Cassie video still has me shaking to my core. And I believe the shit. We have been hearing shit about him, you know. But now in the democratization of information via the internet, I don't give a good goddamn what happens to that sorry motherfucker. All the black people that he done cheated out of money, made money off of, beginning with Biggie, Lil Kim. And I kept always wondering, how come, you know, he made that movie and, you know, Biggie was so abusive to Kim and to Faith. How come he never said nothing? Those were his artists. And you know, when a man beats you up, a lot of times in those romantic situations, they don't beat you all the time where people can see you. So, for example, he didn't really bust Faith's face, but he would bust up Kim's face, and then Lil Kim came with the glasses and shit like that. She's a victim, and so was Faith. And you know, now people cheating on each other when they're young, they were all young. But that kind of abuse, the reason why he ain't say nothing and never mentioned having any role in it, because he was doing the same goddamn thing. Fuck you, Diddy. I'm not going to go in on his kids showing up to court for him. I do have questions that these grown-ass men, now late 20s, early 30s, and Quincy in particular, and it's very hard for me to believe they never saw Diddy hit their mother, Kim Porter, how you can still defend him, be near him. And granted, I do also understand the nuances of this. If somebody has loved you and taken care of you, or you've seen what they can do to harm other people, maybe you're scared. Or maybe the fact that he has 2 younger sisters who are not of age yet, and he knows how Diddy will snatch people away from other people and break it up. Maybe it's his responsibility as the older brother and how his mother trained him to make sure he took care of his brother and 2 sisters. Maybe that's why he's playing nice. We don't know yet. We don't know yet. But I don't give a fuck about his sorry black ass being locked up the same way I don't give a fuck about R. Kelly. The same way they should have never given Bill Cosby a plea deal to where he could admit that he raped women and still not go to jail. So when he got out, it was like, oh yeah, see, Bill Cosby was innocent. No, he wasn't. But the point was, a deal was a deal. That prosecutorial office in the state of Pennsylvania should have never made that deal with him. Yeah, white men do this all the time. And that's why it's gone. Jeffrey Epstein and all of them. But one common denominator with these women they traffic and the girls they traffic, and Matt Gaetz, who's been caught being at a party again with underage girls while he sits around and says racist stuff and what black people don't deserve and Black Lives Matter is racist while he hangs around Marjorie Taylor Greene. Them kind of people are always the main ones carrying on like that. They got evidence, and this motherfucker ain't locked up either. You are absolutely right. But I know most of you all who are going to go hard with me probably don't even know that detail, do you? They deserve to be locked up. They deserve to be locked up and studied, so we can prevent the development of these people in society. But they're a danger to society. A man who beats women is far more of a danger, as far as I'm concerned, than a person who murdered somebody. Because statistically, a person who murders a person doesn't necessarily murder another person. They don't. They don't. That's not how it works. That's why you call a serial killer instead of just a regular murderer, because they're killing people back to back, and that's not normal. Fuck Diddy. Don't ask me about him. I don't want to give him no traffic on the internet. I want those people to get justice, and those people that he has exploited, those women he's abused, the ones who are still too scared to come out. And miss me, stay out of my fucking comments with that. Oh, it was the gold digger stuff. It's the gold digger stuff that went wrong, and young girls need to know that. No. An abuser is it a fucking abuser? Kim Porter wasn't no goddamn teenager when she met him. He was going to do that regardless. Miss me with the gold digging and shit. These men are that powerful. They don't have to give nobody no money that they don't want to give. Please. So anyway, that's my piece on this. I'll talk to y'all soon. But these are just my political takes for now. All right.